My daughter used the $25,000 I handed her for that family getaway to Florida, then stared me right in the eyes at the airport gate and said she'd forgotten to buy my ticket. She said it with that same offhand shrug, like she'd just overlooked picking up a loaf of bread at the store. "Just go on home, Dad," she added, her voice light, almost kind, as if sending me away was the most natural thing in the world. What she didn't get, what she and her husband never seemed to grasp, is that home isn't just a place you retreat to when things get inconvenient. Home is where a man sketches out the blueprints of his life and keeps the contact for a lawyer who's seen it all. By the time their plane lifted off toward those sun-soaked beaches, I'd already placed the call that would turn their little slice of paradise into something a whole lot less forgiving. Before I go on, drop a comment below and let me know where you're tuning in from. And if you believe respect is something you build brick by careful brick, not something handed down like an old family heirloom, hit that like button and subscribe. It'll mean the world to a storyteller like me. The air in that airport terminal hung heavy, thick with the recycled chill of air conditioning and the distant rumble of suitcase wheels on tile floors. It was the hum of comings and goings, of lives pausing before they leaped into the next chapter. I stood there beside a stack of shiny new luggage, the kind with those fancy leather tags still smelling of the store. Emily had picked them out herself. "We deserve to arrive in style, Dad," she'd beamed, her eyes sparkling like she meant it. Of course I'd footed the bill, just like I'd covered the first-class seats. The oceanfront resort with its infinity pools spilling into the Gulf. The whole $25,000 dream. It was my way of pulling the family closer, or so I thought. Emily's husband, Derek, was fussing with their two kids, little Emma and Jack, adjusting straps on backpacks that looked comically oversized on their small frames. His laugh was a bit too loud, a touch too forced, as he ruffled Jack's hair. Emily darted around them like a hummingbird, her sundress fluttering, checking tickets on her phone for the umpteenth time. Her energy buzzed with that high-pitched cheer, the kind that masks something sharper underneath. I was the quiet one in the middle of it all, standing steady as the oak trees I'd once sketched into so many home designs, watching them, feeling that old familiar pull in my chest. The one that comes from loving folks who've drifted just a little too far. We shuffled up to the check-in counter finally, the line behind us stretching like a river of impatient travelers. The agent, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes tired from too many shifts, scanned our passports one by one. She handed them back to Emily, to Derek, to the kids with their easy smiles. Then she got to me. Her fingers paused over the keyboard, her smile softening into something hesitant. "Mr. Hargrove," she said, her tone polite but edged with that practiced neutrality. "I've got your passport here, but no reservation shows up for you on this flight." The words hung there, floating like fog over a blueprint you thought was perfect. They didn't land right away, not with the chatter of announcements and the scent of overpriced coffee swirling around us. I turned to Emily, my question plain as day on my face. No words needed. She'd raised her eyes to mine for just a split second, then dropped them to some invisible spot on the floor. Derek cleared his throat, suddenly very interested in his watch. The kids peered up, confused little faces tilting like question marks. "Emily?" My voice came out soft, but it sliced through the noise clean as a well-honed pencil line. She gasped then, a sharp theatrical pull of air, her hand flying to her chest like in one of those old movies. "Oh, Dad. Goodness, there must be some mix-up." But her eyes, they flickered to Derek's, and I saw it, the truth uncoiling like a vine too long ignored. No accident, no oversight. This was deliberate, a quiet excision. "Dad," Emily murmured finally, still not quite meeting my gaze, her fingers twisting the strap of her purse. "I'm so sorry. Work's been a nightmare. The kids' schedules. Packing all this up," she trailed off, lifting her head with eyes brimming that shallow, scripted regret. "In the rush, I must have just forgotten your ticket. Forgotten. $25,000, and it slipped her mind, like I was the extra line on a sketch she could erase without a second thought. Derek jumped in smooth as ever, pulling out his phone with a flourish. "No worries, we'll sort it right now. Last-minute fares can't be that bad, right?" He tapped away, his face falling into that perfect mask of dismay. "Whoa, almost $2,000 for a seat, and not even close to ours. That's highway robbery." They stood there, shoulder to shoulder, a flawless duo of feigned concern, her, the absent-minded daughter, him, the helpful fixer. I'd seen enough sketches in my day to know when lines didn't add up. This wasn't chaos. This was choreography. They'd rehearsed the steps, probably over late-night wine, convincing themselves it was harmless. Derek stepped closer, clapping a hand on my arm, the grip firm but empty of warmth. "Flight's boarding soon, Dad. No point stressing now." He leaned in, voice dropping to that buddy-buddy whisper. "Why don't you hop a cab home?" "Kick back! We'll hate ourselves for this, promise. Souvenirs from the beach. On us, go home." The phrase echoed in my skull, hollow as an unfinished room. He was dismissing me, like a draft idea tossed aside for something sleeker. I glanced past them, at Emma clutching her stuffed dolphin, at Jack's wide eyes, then back to the luggage I'd bought. Symbols of a family I thought I was mending. The life I'd sketched out for Emily. College tuition, that first apartment down payment, the endless safety net of a father's quiet generosity. And this was her thank you. 2 words. Go home. I didn't shout, didn't plead or bargain. That would have handed them the scene they craved, the drama to paint me as the unreasonable one. Instead, I held Emily's gaze, saw the flicker of a stranger there, and nodded slow, deliberate. "All right then. Safe travels, you all." I turned, walked away without a backward glance, feeling the air shift behind me. Their shared exhale, a sigh of victory they hadn't earned. They figured they'd pulled it off. Shed the old man like yesterday's blueprint, but as my shoes clicked steady on that polished floor, toward the exit doors spilling sunlight, my steps weren't the shuffle of defeat. They were the measured stride of an architect eyeing a flawed foundation, ready to redraw the lines. The cab ride blurred the city past the window, familiar streets twisting into something sharper, more defined. I caught my reflection layered over the passing palms and high-rises. A man of 68 with lines etched deep from years of drafting dreams on paper. For a heartbeat, I looked worn, the terminal's fluorescent glare still clinging to my eyes. But then it sharpened. I wasn't weary. I was awake, seeing the cracks I'd let spiderweb too long. Go home. It wasn't her voice anymore. Mocking from the gate. It was mine now. A blueprint unfolding. The sting of it all. That hot twist in my gut cooled into something solid, precise. Not the messy ache of a family rift. This was the clean geometry of a problem begging for revision. They'd misjudged me bad. Saw an aging dad, a bottomless checkbook, a relic to placate with postcards from the shore. Forgot they were talking to the man who'd sketched their childhood home. Room by sunlit room. Thought they were playing against a side character they could sideline. Had no clue they were facing the lead architect, heading back to his drafting table. The cab curved onto my quiet street, and that simmering focus settled in. No pity party waiting, no wallowing in what-ifs. I was the planner returning to base, tools in hand. The taxi pulled away from the curb with a soft lurch, leaving the terminal's glass facade shrinking in the side mirror like a half-erased sketch. I leaned back against the worn leather seat, the kind that creaks just enough to remind you of all the stories it's carried. Outside, the city unspooled in a haze of midday sun, palm fronds swaying lazy against blue sky. Strip malls and office parks I'd driven past 1,000 times. But today, they looked foreign, distant, like someone had redrawn the lines while I wasn't looking. I watched it all slide by, my reflection ghosting over the glass, superimposed on the world rushing past. 68 years, and here I was, staring at a stranger with salt and pepper hair thinning at the temples, eyes shadowed from too many late nights poring over old blueprints. The airport's harsh lights had etched lines around them, deeper than yesterday. For a moment, that ache bloomed fresh, the one that whispers you're too old for this kind of hurt. But then it shifted, sharpened into something else. Not defeat, clarity. The kind that comes when you step back from a drawing board and finally see the flaws you've overlooked. Home. Emily's words lingered. Not as a dismissal anymore, but as a directive. My own voice now, low and steady, urging me forward. The betrayal's heat, that raw burn in my chest. It ebbed during the drive, gave way to a cool precision, like the first stroke of a pencil on fresh paper. This wasn't some emotional squall to weather. It was a structural flaw, one I'd ignored too long. They'd banked on me crumbling, the soft-hearted dad who'd always sketched a way out for them. But they'd overlooked the architect in me, the one who knows when a foundation's gone rotten, and it's time to call in the reinforcements. The cab eased to a stop outside my bungalow. That low-slung house on Elm Street with the wide veranda Eleanor and I had dreamed up back in '78. The driver glanced back, his eyes kind in the rear view. "Rough day, sir?" I managed a half-smile. Tipping him extra. Just a revision in progress, stepping out. The humidity wrapped around me like an old friend. Thick Florida air laced with jasmine from the neighbor's yard. The front door clicked open, and the house greeted me with its familiar hush. Sunlight slanted through the blinds, dusting the hardwood floors in gold. Everything as I'd left it, yet utterly changed. I didn't head straight for the phone, or the liquor cabinet, no. I made my way to the living room, to that faded armchair by the bay window, Eleanor's chair. The one with the arms worn smooth from years of her leaning over sketch pads, her fingers stained with charcoal and dreams. I sank into it slow, the cushions molding to me like they remembered. The fabric, a soft sage green, still held a whisper of her, that faint scent of oil paints and lavender soap. Lingering like a half-finished canvas, I closed my eyes, let the quiet wrap around me, and there she was, not in some hazy memory, but sharp as the day we lost her. Eleanor had this way of seeing the world. Like every moment was a line waiting to be drawn. She'd spot the tiny imperfections before they shattered the whole. The faint warp in a board, the shadow that didn't quite align. I remembered one evening, not long after Emily had talked us into that loan for her first big art project. A fancy camera setup she swore would launch her career. We'd sat right here, her head on my shoulder, watching fireflies wink through the screen door. "She's got your eye for detail, William," Eleanor had murmured, her voice soft as brushstrokes, but not your patience for the empty spaces on the page. She wants the finished portrait, without sitting for the sittings. I hadn't caught it then, chalked it up to a mother's quiet worry, the kind that comes with raising a girl who chased sunsets with a pencil in hand. Emily, our little dreamer, the one who'd perch on Eleanor's lap as a child, smudging colors across paper while we laughed about building castles in the clouds. But now, folded into that chair, Eleanor's words rang clear as a fresh sheet of vellum. She'd say it often, over cups of tea steaming on the windowsill. "Money doesn't redraw a soul, William. It just highlights the lines that were always there." In the fog of grief after she passed. 3 years now, I'd let that truth blur, mistaken my open wallet for open arms, poured ink into the gaps thinking it'd fill them. But all I'd done was thicken the strokes of Emily's entitlement, turned her from that wide-eyed girl sketching seashells on the beach into a woman who saw my life's work as just another canvas to claim. The ache in my chest deepened, not just for the airport slight, but for Eleanor, for the legacy we'd etched together, line by loving line. Those late nights at the drafting table, her illustrating my designs with flourishes of color, turning blueprints into homes people could feel safe in. This wasn't about a missed flight anymore. It was about the frame we'd built, the one Emily was chipping away at. Piece by careless piece, I opened my eyes, the room coming back into focus, sunlight pooling on the floor like spilled paint. No more fog. The path ahead sharpened, straight and unyielding as a horizon line. I rose from her chair, the warmth of it lingering on my back, and crossed to my study, that sanctuary of mine. Walls lined with rolled blueprints yellowing at the edges, the air still carrying a ghost of graphite and ink. The drafting table, a sturdy oak beast I'd built for our first anniversary, dominated the space, solid, unyielding, meant for decisions that lasted. My hand trailed over its surface, feeling the grooves where pencils had worn paths over decades. This was where we'd planned our life, where Eleanor would sneak in with her easel, turning my angles into art. I didn't need to hunt for the number. It was etched in my mind, like a favorite elevation sketch. I lifted the old rotary phone, its weight reassuring in my palm, and dialed. It rang once, twice, then a voice, crisp and steady. Law offices of Rachel Kim. Rachel, I said. My tone even, like laying down the first grid line. William Hargrove here. A pause. Then her warmth cut through. Mr. Hargrove. Always good to hear from you, though I suspect this isn't about blueprints this time. Everything all right? Straight to it. No dancing around the edges. I need you to move fast on a delicate revision, Rachel. Draft the papers to freeze access to the Hargrove Family Trust for Emily Hargrove Thompson. Effective now. The faint click of keys on her end. Efficient as ever. Got it. What's the trigger? A full reassessment of terms and beneficiaries, I replied. The words settling solid. That'll do for starters. Of course. Her voice stayed level, professional. I'll have it filed within the hour. Notification to Emily. When? The timing. That was the masterstroke. The one that'd make the lines connect. Send it to her main email. Right away. She's airborne to Florida. 6 hours dark. I wanted waiting. The first thing she sees when she surfaces. Silence on the line. But I knew she read the subtext. The strategy. The quiet resolve. Done, Mr. Hargrove, she said. No questions. Consider the ink dry. Thank you, Rachel. I cradled the receiver. Sat there amid the blueprints, picturing that email slicing through the ether. A single line. Redrawing the borders. The first careful stroke in reclaiming the page, as I lingered at the table. The mantel clock in the hall ticked on. A steady rhythm like the pulse of a house holding its breath. That sound. It had marked Eleanor's last days. The quiet heartbeat of our world narrowing. The move I'd just set in motion. It wasn't sparked by one airport slight. It was drawn from years of faint erasures. Small strokes of doubt I'd smudged over. The memories I'd shelved. They unfolded now, crisp and unrelenting, like flipping back through a portfolio you thought you'd archived. But that's a deeper layer, one that needs its own careful shading. That call to Rachel. It was just the first line on a page that needed filling. But as I sat there, the phone still warm in my hand. The study felt heavier, not with regret, but with the weight of all those sketches I'd tucked away. The ones showing Emily's slow drift. From the girl who'd beg for just one more story before bed, to the woman who'd treat my generosity like a bottomless sketchbook. The memories didn't rush in like a flood. They layered on, one translucent sheet over another, until the picture sharpened into something I couldn't ignore anymore. I remember it starting small. The way a tiny flaw in a foundation shows up first as a hairline crack. It was about a year after Eleanor's funeral, the house still echoing with her absence, like a room we'd designed but never quite finished. Emily had breezed in one Sunday afternoon, her hair in that effortless wave she always managed, arms loaded with takeout from our favorite Thai place on the corner. "Family lunch, Dad," she'd announced, planting a kiss on my cheek that lingered just a beat too long. Derek trailed behind, ever the shadow, with a bottle of wine and that salesman grin. The kids, Emma then 5, Jack 3, tumbled in after, turning the living room into a whirlwind of crayons and giggles. We ate on the veranda, the kind of meal that should have mended something. Sun filtering through the live oaks, casting dappled patterns on the table like Eleanor's watercolors. Emily leaned in midway, her eyes lighting up with that old spark. Dad, I've got this idea. A real passion project. She pulled out her phone, scrolling to photos of beaches at dawn. Misty horizons that screamed escape. Photography workshops. Down in the Keys. Teaching folks how to capture the light like Mom did with her paints. But I need gear. A good camera. Lenses to start. Her voice dipped earnest. Fingers tracing the screen. 10,000, that's all. It'll pay itself back in months. And think of the legacy. Keeping her eye alive through me. Legacy. The word hung sweet, pulling at the threads Eleanor had left. I saw Emily at 10, cross-legged on the floor, mimicking her mother's brushstrokes on cheap canvas. The two of them laughing over smudged sunsets. How could I say no? All right, kiddo, I murmured, writing the check before the curry cooled. Build something beautiful with it. Her hug was fierce, real in that moment. Whispering thanks into my shoulder, Derek clapped my back. You're a rock, Will. And for a week, I believed it. Pictures trickled in. Emily with the new Nikon slung around her neck, posing on windswept docks. Captions about chasing light, honoring the muse, but then the posts shifted. No workshops, just sun-drenched selfies from Aruba. Derek grinning poolside with a cocktail. The kids building sandcastles under a foreign sky. The camera? Nowhere in sight. I scrolled late one night, the glow of the screen harsh against the dark house. And there it was. A shot of Emily on a catamaran, wind in her hair, tagged unexpected getaway. $10,000, redrawn as a vacation fund. No mention of the light she'd promised to capture, just the gloss of escape. I closed the app, the check stub staring up from my desk like an accusation. But grief has a way of softening edges, blurring the lines. I told myself it was a detour, that she'd circle back. Fathers do that. We erase the smudges to keep the portrait whole. If that lunch was the first faint line, the boutique was the bold stroke that shattered the illusion. 6 months later, Emily's curated lifestyle shop launched with fanfare. An online haven of boho scarves, hand-stamped jewelry, pieces that tell your story, she'd gushed. Eleanor would have loved the poetry of it, the way Emily described sourcing from local artisans, weaving narratives into every tag. Derek handled the pitch. Over coffee in the kitchen one morning. The kids at school, the house quiet as a blank canvas. It's her dream, Will. But suppliers, overhead, it's eaten us alive. His eyes, earnest behind those wire-rimmed glasses. 40 grand to square it. Keep the doors open, or at least close them gracefully. I saw the strain in Emily's calls leading up. The late-night voicemails laced with exhaustion. Dad, I feel like such a failure. Mom would have known how to make it sing, her voice cracked, pulling at that same thread. So I dipped into savings. The nest egg from my last big commission, a beachfront condo complex that still stood proud against the hurricanes. Signed the check over eggs and toast, watched relief flood her face as she hugged me goodbye. You're saving us, Dad. I'll repay every dime. Moonlighted galleries. Whatever it takes, Derek nodded solemn. Family first, always. 3 days later, I was out running errands, weaving through the Saturday crowd at the waterfront market. The air hummed with salt and fresh bread. Vendors hawking oysters and handmade soaps. I paused at a red light, eyes drifting to the upscale boutiques across the street. Those glass-fronted temptations with names like Whispers of Luxury. And that's when I saw her, Emily, stepping out of one, a sleek black bag swinging from her arm. The kind with a logo that screamed 5 figures. No trace of the weary shop owner from our kitchen. She was radiant, laughing into her phone, the sun catching a glint at her throat. A necklace. Diamonds winking like stars on a string, the kind no artisan could have touched. The light changed. Horns blared behind me, but I drove on numb. That image burned in later. Home alone. I pulled up her feed. There it was, posted an hour before, her beaming. Necklace front and center. Caption, a little sparkle to brighten the storm. Grateful for new beginnings. Blessed, 40,000 to bail the boutique. And this was the closing line? Not a gallery gig. Not a repayment plan, just another layer of shine on a story that wasn't hers to rewrite. I sat there, the house creaking in the afternoon heat, and felt the first real fracture. Not anger, yet. Just the quiet snap of a line giving way, but the real outline, the one that connected all those scattered marks. It was the Hargrove Family Trust. Eleanor and I had drafted it back in the 90s. After my firm took off, pouring our sweat and late nights into a safety net for Emily. Not just stocks and bonds, but the essence of us. The commissions that paid for her braces, the illustrations Eleanor slipped into my proposals. Turning sterile plans into homes with soul, it was meant for her future. A launch pad after I was gone, something to build on, not plunder. The questions started subtle, like faint underdrawings. A casual call over dinner. Emily's voice breezy on speakerphone. Kids chattering in the background. Hey, Dad. Been reading up on estate stuff. Is the trust one of those flexible ones? Revocable. Or locked tight? A week later, another nudge. Derek this time. Over golf on the back nine. Financial advisor mentioned early access clauses. For big opportunities. Like that property flip we're eyeing. Just curious, you know? They circled it gentle. Probing for weak spots in the frame, like architects scouting a site for vulnerabilities. Each time, I traced the line firm. It's for your tomorrow, Em. Not today's impulse. Thought my steadiness would hold the structure. But as I rifled through the study drawer now, pulling out faded folders, the pattern emerged. Persistent queries on disbursements, then the sudden pitch for the Florida trip. Family bonding. Dad. You need this. We'll handle the details. Just wire the $25K up front. Insistence on paying it all. Getting me there. Relaxed under palm shade. Where signatures flow easy with Mai Tais. And the airport? Not a slip. Their clumsy pivot when the bait didn't hook. The trip wasn't about seashells and stories. It was the lore, dangling me in paradise to ink over my life's draft. Leaving me behind? Arrogant proof they figured the payout was theirs regardless. That my era was sketched out. But wait, something snagged as I sifted those papers. A corner of canvas peeking from under a stack of old photos. Yellowed edges curling like forgotten whispers. I pulled it free, heart stuttering. One of Eleanor's small oils. A quiet cove at dusk. Waves lapping soft against weathered rocks. She'd painted it on our last anniversary. Before the illness sharpened its lines. A gift tucked into my briefcase for the man who builds the views. I'd kept it here. In the study, safe from dust and time. Why was it buried? And then, the connection flickered. Emily had borrowed a similar piece last year. For her pop-up exhibit. Just to show the lineage. Dad, it'll come right back. But it hadn't. A quick search on my laptop. Her old posts, and there, sold at auction. Family heirloom finds new home, funding the next chapter. The proceeds? Funneled straight into that Aruba jaunt, the one the camera money seeded. Eleanor's brushstrokes, redrawn as vacation vouchers. The room tilted, that crack widening to a chasm. This wasn't scattered strokes. It was a deliberate overlay. Emily and Derek layering their wants over our lines. Erasing us stroke by stroke. The Florida plan. It clicked final. They'd sold a piece of her soul to bait me, figuring an old man wouldn't notice the theft until the ink dried. I set the canvas down, gentle. Fingers tracing the waves, and felt the blueprint shift. Time to redraw, not patch. But those lines, they led straight to Rachel's office tomorrow. Evidence in hand, ready to expose the forgery. The next morning came soft, sunlight filtering through the blinds like a tentative first wash on canvas. I dressed careful. In that linen suit Eleanor always said made me look like I was framing the horizon, the one with the subtle blue pinstripes, echoing the Gulf waters we'd sketch on lazy afternoons. I gathered my portfolio, not the flashy kind, but a battered leather case she'd given me for our 20th. Stuffed now with bank statements. Printed emails, that damning social media screenshot of Emily's necklace glinting like a misplaced highlight. And tucked in the side pocket, A photocopy of the auction listing for Eleanor's painting. Evidence. Not of rage, but of a structure coming undone. Rachel Kim's office sat on the 14th floor of a downtown tower. All glass and steel humming with the quiet ambition of deals being drawn. The elevator hummed up, my reflection steady in the polished doors. No tremor in the lines. Her receptionist waved me through with a nod. And there she was, behind a desk of reclaimed teak, sharp in a tailored gray dress. Her dark hair pulled back like a taut string on a bow. Rachel, mid-40s. With that old soul poise that made you feel like she was sketching your story before you spoke it. We'd met years back, when I'd consulted her on the trust setup. Her questions cutting clean to the bone. She rose as I entered, hand extended, her grip firm, eyes reading the weight in my case before I set it down. William. Take a seat. Coffee? Or straight to the revisions? I chose the latter, easing into the leather chair opposite. The city sprawling below us like a vast, unfinished plait. No small talk, no easing in. I laid it out steady, page by page, not as a heartbroken father's lament, but as a case study in flawed design. Started with the camera lone, the check stub beside those Aruba photos, lines of sun and sand mocking the legacy pitch. Moved to the boutique bailout, the 40 grand transfer. Then the necklace post, diamonds sharp against the screen. Rachel's face stayed neutral, her pen hovering over a notepad. But her eyes, they flicked to mine with that quiet acknowledgement. I traced the trust queries next, verbatim from the emails. Emily's breezy tone layering over Derek's calculated probes. Early disbursement for opportunities, I quoted. Voice even. And then the Florida push. All up front. To get me there. Pliant under the palms. The airport, I saved for last. The words landing flat, factual as measurement. No embellishment. Just the erasure. When the last page settled, I folded my hands over the case. The leather creaking soft. I'm not here hot-headed, Rachel, I said, low, like shading a shadow. This isn't about mending a bruise. The frame's warped, load-bearing lines of trust and regard. Compromise beyond patch, before it all collapses. I need the options, reinforce or redraw. She leaned back, pen tapping once, twice, against the pad. The rhythm measured. Then she set it down, laced her fingers. Gaze direct as a plumb line. William, from these sheets, this isn't a warp from settling or storm. It's deliberate underlay. Poison mixed right into the base coat. The words landed stark, echoing Eleanor's warnings in the chair the day before. Patching with clauses, tighter locks on the trust. That's just varnishing over rot. You'll spend your days vigilant, defending every stroke. Your choices, your claim to what you've built. Permanent vigil. The phrase struck deep, like realizing the house you've lived in has termites gnawing unseen. That's what it had become, hadn't it? A slow siege. Emily's calls laced with need. Derek's quick chats over fences, all chipping at the edges. You're sketching defense, Rachel went on. Leaning forward now, her voice gaining that quiet fire. But let's consider offense. Not just guarding the canvas, but reimagining the whole piece. Dissolve the old trust. Fold it into something new. A foundation, public, ironclad, that honors you and Eleanor's lines so purely. They couldn't touch it, couldn't twist it, couldn't even see the edges to covet. I stared, the proposal unfolding in my mind like a fresh elevation. I'd walked in thinking amendments, bars on the door. She was offering demolition. Then a masterpiece rising, gates flung wide to the world, save for the one who'd claimed it by blood right. Not just legal maneuvers, liberation, peace, sketched in permanent ink. I glanced out the window. The sprawl below. Buildings rising on their own frames. Some sturdy, some leaning under poor design. Emily's life, propping on entitlement. A shaky scaffold of wants, then a different vision. One with wide arches. Inviting light. Do you mind if I make a call? I asked, voice thicker than I'd meant. Rachel gestured open, sliding the phone across. I dialed Sophia, my niece, Eleanor's sister's girl, 28 now. with that same fire in her sketches. She picked up on the second ring, her laugh bright through the line. No artifice, just the warmth of kin who showed up unasked. "Uncle Will!" Twice in a month. "What's the occasion?" We eased in easy, her voice bubbling about grad school. That interior design program up in Savannah. Professors who pushed her to think beyond walls. Then, her project, a community space for single moms, sustainable fabrics, open layouts that let in the stories people carry. No asks. No edges, just passion spilling like color on wet paper. "You've got it, Soph," I said, emotion catching in my throat. That spark Eleanor had, turning spaces into sanctuaries. Remember what she'd say, the heart of any design? Her pause, then soft. "Sure." The invisible lines, the intent of the maker. I closed my eyes, the study back home flickering in. Eleanor's chair, the canvas I'd unearthed. "Proud of you, kid." Makes her proud. We wrapped, her promise to visit soon hanging warm, and I set the phone down, face up on the desk. Peace settled then, not the numb kind, but profound. Like the moment a composition clicks, Rachel watched. Knew from my face the lines had aligned. Deliberation done. "Let's do it," I said, steady as setting a corner. "Start the dissolution on the Hargrove Trust. Then, build the Eleanor Hargrove Foundation." Her pen flew now, capturing it. Mission: full scholarships. 4 years. For young women chasing interior design, architecture. Fields that shape homes with heart. And when she's ready, first offer for director, to Sophia Hargrove. The words flowed, each one a stroke, laying the frame. 6 hours east, and a world away. Florida's embrace waited, warm and unwitting. 6 hours and 1,000 miles southeast. Paradise unfolded just as the brochures promised. The plane's doors hissed open, spilling Emily and Derek into a wall of warm, flower-laced air, the kind that wraps around you like a promise of forgetfulness. Salt mingled with plumeria, a gentle breeze carrying the hush of waves kissing white sand. The resort's open-air lobby rose like a cathedral of indulgence. Vaulted ceilings draped in cascading ferns, the distant strum of a guitar weaving through the hum of happy arrivals. Cool towels, chilled guava juice, handed with aloha smiles that made the world feel small and kind. Emily sighed deep. That pure, unguarded sound of surrender, squeezing Derek's arm as they stepped forward. This is it. The reset we needed. Her sundress caught the light. Loose waves framing a face already softening into vacation glow. Derek, expansive in his linen shirt, surveyed it all like a king claiming his cove, the infinity pool shimmering endless into the turquoise sea. He'd nailed it. The getaway, the escape from the grind. Phone out, he framed the shot. Pool edge blurring into horizon. Caption half formed in his mind, what Paradise found. No mention of the cost, or the cost cutting at the gate. As the Wi-Fi latched on, notifications bloomed, but one email sliced through. Subject line stark from Rachel Kim's firm. His thumb froze mid-swipe, stomach twisting like a poorly anchored line. He angled the screen away, mumbling about spotty service. But Emily caught the shift, her brow furrowing. What is it? He waved it off, pocketing the phone, but the words burned. Trust frozen, immediate. Pending review. Beneficiary access suspended at the marble check-in desk. The concierge, a lithe woman with hibiscus tucked behind her ear, beamed polished welcome. Aloha, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson. Just the credit card for incidentals. Resort fees. Derek, pulse quickening, slid over the platinum card, the one tied to the Hargrove well. Limits as vast as the ocean view. She swiped, polite frown blooming. Swiped again. Apologies, sir. It's declining. The word echoed alien. A smudge on pristine stone. His face heated. Flush creeping up his neck. Try once more. Must be your reader, her smile held. Mechanical now, but the screen mocked. Declined. I wasn't there. Of course. No front row to their unraveling, but in the hush of my study. Blueprints unrolled like old friends. I traced it clear as if I'd sketched the scene myself, Derek's hand trembling as he snatched the card back. Voice pitching sharp. "This is insane. Run it again!" The concierge's calm cracking just a hair, while guests nearby shifted, whispers rippling like tide pools. Emily, nails digging crescents into his sleeve. Her whisper venom-laced. "What the hell?" "Fix it, now! The kids—" Sensing the shift, Emma's lower lip quivering, Jack tugging at skirts. "Mommy? Beach?" Panic bloomed then, hot and thorny. Their paradise curdling under the lobby's fans. No room keys, no welcome lay, just the sting of exposure. Derek's text started first, projected cool, but laced with edge. "Dad, card glitch, probably fraud flag. Call the bank when you can." I read it over coffee, steam curling like unanswered questions, and set the phone aside. 10 minutes. Another from Emily, the Polish fraying. "William, they're holding our stuff." Kids melting down. "Sort this." The calls followed, insistent, vibrating across the oak like seismic warnings. Derek first, ringing to voicemail. His message clipped. "Come on. Pick up. This is ridiculous. Emily next." Fury bubbling. "What are you doing?" "We're stranded here, with the babies. Because of your damn oversight." Derek again, volume rising. Then her. A torrent. "Answer. Now, is this payback? Some twisted lesson? You've ruined everything. For your own grandkids. And the rawest, pure Emily. Stripped bare. You're heartless, selfish, leaving us to rot in this heat. How could you?" Fascinating, really. Watching from afar, the varnish peeling layer by layer. All that charm. The easy laughs. The family-first veneers, sloughing off with each unanswered ring. Beneath, the stark canvas of fear. Two souls realizing the endless credit line, the invisible scaffold they'd leaned on, had snapped taut. They weren't calling for the father, the uncle to their joys. They were dialing the banker, the vault keeper, terrified the till had run dry. In my quiet, amid the tick of the clock, I felt no glee, just the steady calm of consequence unfolding. A lesson inked in actions they couldn't erase. Back home. The workshop called me then. That sunlit room off the garage, where I'd retreat with my T-square and dreams. The air smelled of graphite and sea salt. Tools laid out like faithful companions. I pulled Eleanor's anniversary sketch from the bench. That little cove painting. Its waves faded but true. A soft cloth in hand. I buffed the frame gentle, bringing back the gleam. Each pass a reclamation. My phone danced on the scarred wood, skittering with their names. Emily, Derek, Emily again. Buzz after buzz. The tally climbing. 15, 32, 47. Each one a plea. Then demand. Then accusation. But I let them ring, the sound a distant surf, while the wood warmed under my touch with every stroke. I glanced, saw the desperation mount, not for my voice, but for access, the vault. And in that, a peace rooted deep, unshakable as a cornerstone. This wasn't vengeance, a petty crosshatch. It was revision, teaching in the only language they'd heed, the bite of boundaries unmet. 3 days dragged for them. A gauntlet of budget flights cancelled, layovers in muggy terminals, the slow grind of entitlement humbled. I knew their return before the tires crunched gravel. The car doors slammed thunderous, footsteps stomping the porch like Judgment Day. No knock, just pounding, fists demanding entry. I opened slow, filling the frame, and took them in. Paradise had etched its toll. Emily's glow, that fresh tan, now splotched and peeling, her linen shift rumpled, eyes hollowed by salt and spite. Derek, gaunt, jaw set like poorly set mortar. The confident stride reduced to a lurch. They surged past. Fury their battering ram. Speeches no doubt rehearsed over stale airport pretzels. What the actual hell, Dad? Emily exploded, whirling in the entry. You ghost us. Freeze everything. Strand us like criminals. With the kids? And now this? Derek flanked her, voice booming. We called, begged. Thought you were hurt. Or worse. All over a ticket flub? A honest slip we owned? He paced, gesturing wild, humiliating, sleeping on benches, explaining to Emma why Daddy's card's broken. What kind of monster? Emily layered on. The wounded mom, tears welling on cue, the resort, treating us like thieves. Kids crying for beds that never came, all because your ego bruised. We were terrified for you, William. And this cruelty, united. They wove the tale, victims in a farce scripted by a bitter old draftsman. Masterful. The flip, me the villain. Them the pure-hearted crew derailed by whim. But I'd read the revisions. I sat, hands loose on my knees, letting the gale batter the walls of my silence. Their words peaked, then ebbed, hanging ragged in the air when the echo died. I spoke, volume soft as a whisper sketch, but slicing clean. Done now? The question lingered. No room for retort. Emily's mouth gaped. Derek froze mid-stride. I nodded faint to the armchair across, where Rachel sat serene. Leather folder balanced on her knee. Her presence a quiet elevation, unnoticed in their storm. Their eyes widened, shock rippling. The trap sprung clean, the heartbeat stretched, their indignation curdling to sputter. But I didn't let it root. Turned to the coffee table, smooth as drafting vellum, and slid the folder open. You paint this as a ticket oversight, I began, eyes on Emily, steady. Let's redraw with facts. First sheet. The bank transfer, 40,000 Stark, laid it gentle between us. This for the boutique debts. Beside it, the necklace photo, diamonds mocking. And this, your new beginning. 2 days post-check, her face tightened, a porcelain crack. But silence held. Derek shifted, uneasy. I drew more. Checks for car down payments, tax covers, the small drips, dinners, kids' gear, club dues. A growing mosaic, their life in ledges, dependency drawn plain. You call it a mistake, I said, voice dipping low. I call it the last line in 5 years of withdrawals. Systematic. From a well you never dug, the pile loomed, color draining from them. That righteous fire guttering to dread. Eyes darted, hunting escapes, loopholes to reframe. None came. I nodded to Rachel, faint. One more stroke. She lifted a single printout. Email thread, held it like a reveal. Court copy. From Emily Thompson to Derek Thompson. A week pre-trip, her tone, neutral as a spec sheet. Subject, beach old man plan. Emily choked. A small, strangled gasp. Her hand fluttering to her throat. Derek paled, waxen. Like overwashed linen, Rachel read on, dispassionate. Get him poolside. Mai Tai in hand. Signatures flow easy. 25K steep, but trust payout covers it tenfold. Even if he balks. The painting sale offsets. Eleanor's Cove fetched 8 at auction. Perfect buffer, the words detonated. Silent but shattering. Not just the lure, the relaxed sign-off. The twist. Eleanor's soul on canvas, bartered for their buffer. Her waves funding their waves. The auction link. I'd slipped in the folder. Tied it bow. Proceeds traced to the trip's contingency. Masks crumbled. Not slow, but dust fine. Greed twitching raw beneath. Emily's tears, no longer scripted, spilled hot. Real as regret's edge. Derek's hands shook. Fists clenching empty air. No outburst followed. No pleas or spins. Just the ugly truth, sprawled on the table like spilled ink. The clock ticked. Marking their new outline, irrevocable. Emily rose first. Movements brittle. Gaze fixed on the door like a vanishing point. Derek trailed, hollowed, eyes meeting mine once, empty as an erased grid. No sorry, no spark. Just ruined, they went, door clicking final, soft as a period. No triumph swelled in me, no vengeful rush. Just the deep, settling quiet after a tempest. clarity washing in like dawn over dunes. The structure held, redrawn true. A few weeks slipped by, quiet as the tide easing out, leaving behind that deep, restorative hush. Emily's silence, once a blade twisting slow, now just an echo fading into the walls. No calls, no texts clawing at the edges. Just the consequence settling like dust after a build. In that space, Rachel and I worked steady. Not demolition, but creation. Papers filed. The old trust dissolving like an outdated draft, giving way to the Eleanor Hargrove Foundation. Scholarships sketched out, full rides for women with fire in their lines. Chasing designs that turned houses into hearths. Spaces that held stories, not just walls. I met Sophia at a little cafe on the waterfront. The kind tucked between bait shops and ice cream stands, where the air smelled of roasted beans and briny breeze. Mismatched chairs, Formica tables scarred from salt spray, the Gulf lapping lazy just beyond the pickets. She arrived early. As always, her sketchbook under arm, sundress printed with wild hibiscus, that easy energy lighting her like morning on canvas. 28. But with Eleanor's gaze, seeing the poetry in the everyday, we ordered black coffee for me, iced latte for her, foam hearts swirling as she stirred between us. On the scarred wood, I slid the new folder across. Its cover a deep cerulean, like the sea at noon. Soph, I asked you here to share a project. Her brow lifted curious, fingers tracing the emboss. Eleanor Hargrove Foundation. She opened it slow, eyes scanning the mission, the scholarships. The nod to intent of the maker widened, then brimmed. Not confusion, but that quiet dawn of understanding. I leaned in, voice low over the murmur of waves and chatter. It's built on what she cherished, turning empty frames into doors for others. Funding the dreamers, the ones who'll shape homes that heal. I told her all. The airport's erasure, the layers peeled back. Eleanor's painting bartered like a footnote. No blame in the telling, just the revision, the choice to redirect the lines. A foundation needs a guardian, someone with vision, integrity, the kind that sees the invisible strokes. Her hand found mine, tears tracing silent, not the staged kind, but genuine, spilling like rain on parched earth. Uncle Will, it's her. You both. In every line, voice thick, she squeezed. The Cove painting, the one she sold. I saw the listing, ached for it. But this, building from the break, it's more than reclaiming. It's extending the canvas, I nodded. Throat tight, seeing Eleanor in her tilt, that fire ready to ignite. When you wrap grad school, I said. Steady. The director's chair. It's yours. Not a handout, a handoff. Entrust it to the builder who gets it. Her eyes, no greedy glint, just that brilliant steadiness. The light of one who rolls up sleeves for the work. I'll make doors, windows. Whole worlds, she whispered, promise woven in. For the ones like me, like her, who dream in color. We lingered, talking sunsets. Her latest renderings, the cafe's hum wrapping us like an old sketch. When she left, folder clutched like a blueprint to tomorrow. I sat a spell, watching gulls wheel over the water, feeling the weight lift, line by line. Back in the workshop now, the house breathes different. Not the stifled quiet of before, but open, still, like a canvas stretched taut, waiting. I've taken up the Cove painting again. That small oil she'd brushed for our last good year. Waves rendered soft, rocks unyielding, a fresh cloth. Gentle strokes, coaxing the colors back, the deep indigo returning, Eleanor's hand alive in every crest. The phone stays silent, no digital tempests, just the rasp of linen on frame. Order restored for years. I figured legacy was the vault, the safety net sketched for Emily, a buffer against the world's rough edges. But you can't draft a net for someone hell-bent on snipping cords. She and Derek. They eyed my work as a prize to claim. Never grasping the worth wasn't in the pigment, but the patience, the calluses from holding the brush steady. They craved the portrait, scorned the sittings. The empty spaces where character fills in. True legacy. It's not what you leave behind in ledgers. It's what you etch inside souls. The standards that stand when the frames fall. The Eleanor Foundation. Opening vistas for builders with heart. That's the mark. What Emily chased. Just an inheritance. Fleeting as sandcastles at tide. I've learned the divide. Hard, but clear. As for me, the board's not blank yet. I'm plotting a crossing, not to some glossy strand, but to the cliffs of Ireland, where my grandfather's lines began. Those misty coasts that whispered Eleanor's inspirations. Spent a lifetime framing homes here. Time to trace where the first strokes came from. I didn't redraw for spite, or to settle scores. I did it for the unpriceable self-respect, because dignity, that's the one structure you draft solo. And you never, ever, hand over the pencils. This tale, it wasn't ever about dollars traded for sun. It was the gentle fade of regard. When love lacks borders. Years on, I cast myself as the endless buffer, giving blind. The hardest lesson, generosity unchecked feeds the grab. Real family heirloom, not a safe, but a bar of honor to uphold, guarding your quiet, your worth. That's no selfishness. It's the truest draft you'll ever make. What would you sketch in my place? And what's the real line of legacy for you?